Script: Marriage, Divorce, and Singleness, a Biblical Perspective on Relationships. Opening hook: Relationships today are more complicated than ever. Marriage rates are declining, divorce is common, and many people question whether lifelong commitment is even realistic anymore. But according to Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell, these struggles are not just social issues, they are spiritual ones. In a teaching based on Gospel of Matthew, chapter 19, he explores what the Bible says about marriage, divorce, and singleness, and why these relationships matter so deeply in the spiritual realm. Section 1. Marriage as Spiritual Warfare. Pastor Mitchell begins by describing marriage as far more than a legal agreement or romantic partnership. He explains that marriage is a sacred covenant designed by God. In fact, the Bible describes marriage as a symbolic picture of the relationship between Jesus Christ and the church. Because of this spiritual significance, Mitchell believes marriage often becomes a primary target for spiritual conflict. He shares a personal story about experiencing intense spiritual warfare immediately after marrying his wife, Lena. For him, the experience reinforced the idea that marriage is not just emotional or relational, it is spiritual. Section 2. Jesus' teaching on divorce. Mitchell then turns to the passage where religious leaders questioned Jesus about divorce. The Pharisees attempted to challenge Jesus by asking whether divorce was legally acceptable. Instead of debating legal loopholes, Jesus pointed them back to the original design described in Book of Genesis. From the beginning, marriage was meant to unite one man and one woman into a lifelong partnership. Jesus famously summarized this design with the statement, "What God has joined together, let no one separate." According to Mitchell, this teaching emphasizes that marriage was never intended to be temporary. However, Jesus also explained that divorce was permitted in ancient Israel because of the hardness of human hearts, not because it reflected God's original intention. Section 3. The Calling of Singleness. After hearing Jesus' high standard for marriage, the disciples responded with surprise. If marriage required such commitment, they wondered if it might be better not to marry at all. Jesus responded by introducing a surprising perspective. Singleness, he explained, is not a punishment or failure. For some people, it is a unique calling. Pastor Mitchell highlights that singleness can provide freedom for undivided devotion to God. Without the responsibilities of marriage and family, a person may be able to dedicate more time and energy to spiritual service. In this way, both marriage and singleness can serve meaningful purposes within God's plan. Section 4. A Faithful Groom. Toward the end of the message, Mitchell shifts the focus to a larger spiritual picture. Regardless of whether someone is married or single, the Bible describes believers as being part of a spiritual relationship with Christ. In this imagery, Jesus Christ is portrayed as the faithful groom, and the church represents the bride. Unlike human relationships, which can sometimes end in separation or failure, Mitchell emphasizes that Christ remains faithful to his people. Even when individuals fall short or make mistakes, the relationship between Christ and the church is not abandoned. For Mitchell, this faithfulness reflects the heart of God, one that pursues restoration rather than rejection. Closing reflection: marriage, divorce, and singleness are deeply personal experiences that shape many people's lives. Some carry the joy of lifelong partnership, others carry the pain of broken relationships, and many find themselves navigating life alone. Pastor Mitchell's message encourages believers to see these experiences through a spiritual lens. Whether married or single, the ultimate relationship he points to is the one between humanity and Christ, because in a world where relationships sometimes fail, the promise of divine faithfulness remains constant.